All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Cheyenne Rugby. I am the current EVP or Executive Vice President of Partnerships for Nuclear Canada. We're going to begin the session right now. Nuclear is a registered 501c3. We're a nonprofit, and we're honored to be supported by a lot of our sponsors. We are partnered with many organizations such as Fedsprout, for example, which is our exclusive grant writing sponsor. And today we have the honor of joining them for one of their writing proposals and grant writing workshops. We've done a number of these. I think this is number 6 right now. And I'm going to pass it on to Alap, who can begin, and as well as Jack. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Alap. I'm the president at Fedsprout, and we're a nationwide consulting firm. We're helping organizations across the U.S. with winning as well as managing government awards, and also helping with translational services. We are going to be focused today on helping you understand what it takes to win a DoD SBIR Phase I proposal. And this is in continuation of the prior webinar a couple of weeks ago that gave an introduction. So I just want to make sure that everybody here is aware of the content, and also, if you can, please make sure you mute your mics while we're speaking. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker of today, which is Jack. And Jack, I'm going to pass it over to you. Also, yeah, before we move forward, one thing is, I know during this webinar, we're going to try to answer a number of questions. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat. We'll try to respond during the webinar itself. If we are not able to, then we have a Q&A session towards the end of this presentation, where we'll go over some of your questions. But again, if we can't answer all of them, feel free to schedule a free one-on-one consultation, 30 minutes with us, and we can talk about anything SBIR or STTR. All right, Jack, I'm passing it over to you now.
Great. Thank you, Alap. For those of you who were here a couple weeks back, hello again. And for the new people, hello for the first time. My name is Jack Philpott. I recently retired from the Department of Defense, where I was an engineer and project manager working within acquisition and sustainment of various systems, most recently medical systems. Among the many tasks I had there was overseeing a $20 million SBIR portfolio. I have been the contracting officer's representative and technical point of contact, core and TPOC, for over 24 such awards, and I have reviewed and evaluated and scored hundreds of SBIR proposals, Phase Is, Phase IIs, and Phase IIIs alike. So I'm hoping to impart some of my experience and knowledge onto all of you to help you maximize your score when you apply for SBIR grants. So for those who haven't seen my prior webinar or who would like to see it again, we've posted it to YouTube. You can go there, and I'm probably posting it in the chat right now. You can go there and view it again. I recommend you do so. It covers the basics of SBIR and how the SBIR program works and how to register for it. So for this presentation, we're going to do a deeper dive specifically into what goes into a Phase I proposal, how to navigate that solicitation process, and how to basically maximize your score and increase your chances of winning a SBIR contract. Now, that first contract can be the hardest one to get. There is a big mountain to get over because we would often get 50 to 150 or even more proposals and then only select 3 people. So it's highly competitive and every point counts. I've had to reject proposals that scored a 96 out of 100 because there were 3 other people that scored 97 or above. It can be that competitive. So some of the tips I'll give you will help you squeeze out as many points as possible, maximize your chances of getting that award. I'm also going to talk about the specifics of the DoD in a little more detail than I did last time, specifically to let you know what those concepts of operations and concepts of employment, ConOps and ConEm, mean from a standpoint of how you should be addressing them in your proposal. I'll also talk about some resources such as the Technical and Business Assistance Program TABA that you can take advantage of as well. So if you tuned in last time, you saw this slide before. I'm not going to go through it again, but essentially this was one of my SBIRs when I worked with the Marine Corps. I wrote the topic, a company named Rennie managed to win a Phase I award, and that translated ultimately to it now being a fielded program of record for an expeditionary medical refrigeration unit. I'll be periodically talking about some of the things that Rennie did that got them noticed by the evaluation team and other things they took advantage of to protect their data and other efforts that were of benefit to them and could be of benefit to you. Now, if you haven't already done the registration, I talk about it in the proposal in the previous presentation in more detail, but you need to do that. There's 3 places you have to register before you can even play. Go to that website, and if you need some help Sherpaing, Fedsprout can help guide you through that process if you need. I'll go see the other presentation for more detail, please. Now, FY26 SBIR topic schedule has officially posted. You can see the dates there. October 1st, coming up very soon, is the very first release of new DoD SBIR topics. So my recommendation is, even if you're not yet registered, just go there and start reading the topics and start looking at how they work, familiarize yourself with what the topics look like, because step 1 is going to be deconstructing those topics. Note too that you have a Q&A window that goes from when they first drop that topic to when they first open up the topics for submission. After that, there's a cone of silence descends and there are restrictions on the Q&A. So I will be hammering again and again on really taking advantage of that opportunity to talk to the technical point of contact or the contract specialist to answer your questions. Now, here is an actual SBIR topic that came out earlier this fiscal year. It is for a small innovative mission power sources, or SIMPs. If they'd had a Gen Zer on the team, they might have avoided that awkward acronym, but here we are. Anyway, this one's very small and to the point. Some of my ones were more detailed with a lot more requirements, but even a small one like this, you can really start to look into things and deconstruct it and start to see what it is they're telling you and glean a lot of good information from this, as well as figure out the questions you need to answer. Like modernization priorities, advanced materials. Well, that's telling you the type of technologies they're expecting, which means the type of qualifications they would be looking at and the type of test equipment, laboratory space, facilities that would be needed to do this program. They also call out the organization that's hosting this, the Joint Program Executive Office for Armaments and Ammunition. This is a acquisition command, which means these are likely also the people who would be buying and fielding this product. So that's important to know. It also speaks along with, they're calling out MIL Standard 810, the ConOps and ConEmt, the concepts of employment and operations. Who's going to use it, where they're going to use it. That speaks to the type of ruggedization you're going to need to do for this system. They call out some specific technical specifications, a volume specification, a power output, which they say is for the duration of the mission. Well, what's the duration of the mission? That's important. If you're doing a power source, you need to know not just the watts, but the watt hours, right? So that's a good question to ask that technical point of contact. It's also, it's an ammunition. So there may be under international trafficking and arms restrictions, ITAR. That would affect your commercialization plan by limiting who else you could share this technology with. It may be classified. It should tell you these things up front, but you might want to verify with the TPOC or the contract specialist. It calls out the specific system it's going to be in. It's going into a fuse inside a munition. It tells you where it's using it, how it's being used. You can do research to find out how ammunition is typically stored and transported, who uses it, what their skill levels are. Even this tiny little bit of information right here is already setting you in the direction of the information you need to learn before you apply for this topic and before you speak to this topic. Now, plan ahead. do your research. You start from where that thing is, whether that's that SIMPS or whether it's my expeditionary medical refrigeration, and start doing research. Who else is working in this tech space? What other products are fielded that are like this thing? If I was going for that SIMPS, I would definitely be looking at what munitions would it be used on, what systems use those munitions, and all the other ConOps and ConAmp questions that would affect your design. You can look into similar platforms and similar programs. You can absolutely take advantage of that opportunity to speak with the TPOC. Find out as much as you can. Ask for very many questions, specific questions. Familiarize yourself as much as you possibly can with what that TPOC wants, because that's what you're going to be designing against and proposing against. And again, while you talk to the TPOC, have them verify that they understand this. Okay, so as I understand it, this is going to go inside the actual fuse on the munitions. And as I understand it, that munition will be transported this way and used by this type of person. So am I correct in this assumption, or am I missing something? Other opportunities for research and planning? Well, there's often symposiums and conferences every year. This is life science focused. Well, MHSRS, Military Health Systems Research Symposium, every year down in like August, I believe, in Orlando. These are places you can go. You can talk to the actual program offices. You can talk to the actual users. You can talk to other companies that, may be potential partners. There may be somebody that has those skills you lack that you can partner with in your SBIR. And I often get questions about whether it's better to go for a whole lot of SBIRs or focus on a small number. Well, my advice is typically to go for the targeted approach, the sniper rifle, not the shotgun. Because when I would review topics, I could always tell the people who are just throwing out SBIRs, throwing out at everybody, and just see what sticks. And you just get a lot of boilerplate. The people who really bore down and focused on the small number that were the best applicable to their technology and their skill sets tended to score the highest. So particularly the very small startups where you have limited resources, focus on the ones that you think best fit your technology and your skill sets would be my advice. Now, two things will be submitted as part of a Phase I proposal, a technical volume and a cost volume. The technical volume is what will be scored. All 100 points are from the technical volume. So that will be the focus of this presentation, and will be probably most of your work as you develop your proposal. Remember that the technical volume asks for your plans for Phase I, but also your plans for Phase II. So you're going to need to plan ahead to what will happen if you win that Phase II as well. Here are the 12 sections currently in the technical volume template. I downloaded these right from that bottom link to templates. I would recommend you go to that link and download a copy of the template and look through it. It goes through each of these sections, describes what they are, describes what needs to go in them, and that's a very important first step. I've also kind of color-coded it into the way that I would look at them and how and where I would find the information that I needed when I did my scoring. So some cases it's pretty obvious, yeah, the technical objectives and statement of work is going to be probably a lot of your 40 points for technical relevance. And commercialization strategy is going to be where a lot of your commercialization points are. But you can also earn points in other sections. For example, if your subcontractor has the test labs to do all the mill standard testing, that can speak to your ability to complete the technical goals, and also your ability to commercialize potentially. So there are many places where you can get points outside of just the obvious places. So technical merit is 40 points. It is the largest number, and it is also going to get probably most of the attention from the reviewers, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the thing that's going to solve the problem, the device that is going to fill the gap. So definitely want to put a lot of thought and attention into doing your technical merit and your design. You need to not just say you're going to comply with the technical objectives, you need to say how you're going to do it. You're going to need to show how you're going to do it. So be specific and align the technology and the tasks you're going to do to those requirements. You need to provide enough detail that it makes it clear to the engineers that you have the technical know-how and the proper systems engineering and development approach to meet those technical goals, but you also need to do the so what. You need to be able to describe to the master sergeant exactly why he wants your system instead of another system. Why is your technology better? And I'll give some examples going through. Illustrations and drawings and diagrams are a great way to convey a lot of information in a small amount of space. So make sure that your picture says 1,000 words, but it says the right 1,000 words. So some of these Army SBIRs, you may be limited to 10 pages. So you really want to make sure that you maximize the amount of useful information, scoreable information, and not waste time on boilerplate or polite language. Get to the point. Now, I talked briefly about the operational challenges for the DoD in the last presentation. I'll go a little bit more in depth, but if you haven't worked with the DoD before, there are many things that are applicable in the DoD operating environment, whether it's the MIL standards that you have to comply with, that ConOps and that ConEMP. I talked last time about reliability, availability, and maintainability. There are various things, and those are good questions to be asking your TPOC, as well as familiarizing yourself with in general. The DoD field environment is a big one, and this is your average commercial off-the-shelf system is not going to survive if you hand it to a soldier or Marine. It's going to be bouncing around in the back of a tactical vehicle down rutted, crappy roads. It's going to be exposed to the rain and the dust and the sand and the mud. It's going to be kicked and dropped and dragged. They do not treat the equipment gently. And well, there's going to be all kinds of temperature variations. It may be used 1 week in the desert and the next week in the Arctic. You don't know. There's also electromagnetic interference concerns. Your system can't interfere with anything else, and it has to survive some really high power radio frequency systems like comm systems, radar systems, jammers, and the like. Those are those MIL standards. So talk with your TPOC, make sure you know exactly which MIL standards are going to apply and what you would need to do to make sure your system is going to survive getting to where it needs to go and operate while it's there. But even if it's mounted in a platform as opposed to being used in the field, there's still challenges. Every vehicle has its own unique shock and vibration. Aircraft pull G-forces. If it lands on an aircraft carrier, there's a shock. If it's mounted on the yardarms of an aircraft carrier, it's getting hit by all that salt spray, as well as the rain and the hail, as well as just gigawatts of electromagnetic power from all of those radar systems and jamming systems that it is right next to. So a lot of hardening will have to go into the final product. And while you don't need to fully speak to this for your phase one proposal, just even casually mentioning some of these things will earn you some points. As a last thing, just kind of talking about that SIMPS that goes in a fuse. If your power source has leaks an electrical signal that would trigger the squib, it might cause the munition to explode. Stuff like that has happened. In 1967, the radar on the USS Forrestal caused munitions to explode, killing a bunch of sailors. That was MIL Standard 464. So just little things like that you might not think about that are important. Talk to that TPOC, talk to the user community, familiarize yourself with just what kind of things are going to be expected. There are other concerns. I would get a lot of proposals for a system built around an iPhone or a Samsung tablet. And, for phase one, that's probably fine. And for stateside, that's fine. I mean, I fully understand why you'd want to do that. Samsung or whoever has already done all the hard work in designing the architecture and the connectivity and finding the right battery. You just have to design an app for it. Well, the problem is depending on the operational environment, that may be wholly inappropriate. If it's giving off a easily identifiable signal, or it's like posting a geostamp that will allow the enemy to find you, well, they will kill you. It's happening right now in Ukraine. Lithium batteries are a bigger concern on aircraft and ships in particular. If you have a whole bunch of these things in a pallet in the belly of a ship and the batteries start to burn, it burns hotter than steel. What's a ship made out of? Bad things happen. But even other things, if you have to use this during night operations, if the screen light either gives away your position or interferes with your night vision goggles, that's going to be a problem. They're not going to want the iPhone with all of its special proprietary connections because that's more cables and things that they have to field and provision, which comes with a logistical footprint. And even that connectivity is not guaranteed. There was a company that had a system that they were trying to sell to the Marine Corps where every 6 months you had to update the library by connecting through 4G, which was fine in Camp Lejeune, but when you're in a fly speck island in the middle of the Pacific, well, there's no 5G, there's not even 1G. So there may be limits to connectivity, there may be limits to the power available. These are all the type of questions that you should be talking with the TPOC. And so, yes, that iPhone might be great for phase one, but when you get to your phase two section, you can say something along the lines of, while we're using this iPhone platform for phase one, moving into the actual fielded system, we will work with the TPOC to identify an architecture that best meets the user's needs in the operating environment. Quick sentence like that can earn you points by making it clear you understand these issues. But wait, there's more. If you're used to designing things for someone with a PhD sitting in a lab, you have different expectations. In this case, it may be somebody who's right out of high school, 18 years old, high school education, and they may be having to use the system with rounds exploding over their heads. Or even at peacetime, if you're operating on the deck of an aircraft carrier, that is not a place to be distracted trying to flip through 5, 6, 10 submenus to find the stuff you need. You might get sucked into a jet intake. It happens. So ease of use, being really simple to use, and is important, as is that reliability, availability, and maintainability. Again, they're not going to expect you to give a full sustainment plan within your proposal, but speaking to this stuff, we will work with the technical point of contact going forward to make sure we are designing for maximum reliability and maintainability in the theater environment. Little things like that can gain you a lot of points. And just take advantage of that 30 minutes to talk to Fedsprout, and we can talk specifically more about some of these things if you have additional questions. Now, related work. This is a section that actually gets more points than you might expect. If you've done something very similar in the past, that gives the evaluators confidence that you can do similar stuff in the future. Rennie Technologies didn't start designing medical refrigerators. Their first thing was a small HVAC system that they used for a cooling vest for NASCAR drivers. They took that, and in a different SBIR, they turned it into a warming vest for small boat operators with the Navy. Both of those projects gave us the confidence that when combined with this other technology, they would be able to meet our technical objectives. It spoke to their technical as well as their personnel and communication score. And think outside of the box. Let's just say you've developed a control algorithm for a terrestrial robot. Well, you can adapt that to work in a UAS. You can adapt that to work in a satellite. There are ways that you can take the core technology and do other things with it. And so demonstrating that you can do that in this section will gain you extra points. Qualifications is the next 30 points. And this is you, your team, and your subcontractors, what skills you have, how much time you can provide, and how all of that gives your team exactly everything it needs to meet those technical goals. And the big thing here is that making sure that those qualifications align to those technical goals. it's all well and good that you have a master's degree in quantum physics, but if you're designing an electrical system, I'd rather you have a bachelor's in electrical engineering, for example. So really aligning everything back to those original objectives, whether it's the technical statement of work or whether it's the qualifications, will get you the most points. Subcontractors are a good way to fill those gaps and fill your gaps. And in the case of a small company out of a like the startup, we don't expect you to have a lot of these integration or ruggedization skills. But you can find people who do. In phase 2, it's going to become incredibly important. And since you have to speak to what you're going to do in phase 2, well, start thinking about that pretty soon. Maybe you partner with XYZ company that you met at MHSRS who does integration work. Remember, they can do up to 49% of the work. They don't even have to be a small business. Find that partner, get a letter of commitment from them that lets the evaluation team know that they're on board, they're serious, and that they will be there, and that you're not just name dropping. And one thing, sometimes you might not be able to find someone that's going to partner with you up front. However, if you get to phase 2, somebody would definitely want to work with you then. So don't try to hide your gaps. Don't try to sweep it under the rug and pretend the test team won't notice. They will. It's better, even if you can't fill the gaps, to acknowledge them and give a plan on how you will. In phase 1, we will look for a integration partner. We've identified several possible candidates, and we will find somebody that will have these skills in integration and ruggedization in order to meet the full technical goals of this project. Just little things like that will gain you points. Facilities as well can gain you or lose you points. If, for example, you are making something that relies on a circuit card you just designed, who's going to fabricate that? Do you have the facilities? Does a partner have the facilities? Have you identified a third-party manufacturer? Identifying those will either get you or lose you points, because in order to do the job, you have to have the tools. Commercialization is the final 30 points, and the one where a lot of startups in particular can struggle because, well, you haven't done this before in many cases. If you've never actually manufactured, fielded, and sustained a DoD system, well, we don't expect you to have those skills. But we expect you to find somebody who can or have a pathway to gain those skills. And this is where you describe a lot of that. This is where you describe how you plan to take that design, how you plan to turn that into a working prototype, and how you plan to turn a working prototype into a final system that it can be manufactured, fielded, and how you plan to sustain it once fielded. And if all that latter stuff seems outside of what you're interested in, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be you. Starting in phase 3, it no longer even has to be a small business. You could describe a situation on how you will work with your partner and lease your IP to them to do the commercialization. That's a strategy. There's ways to do it. But commercialization isn't just how you're going to build and sustain your product, it's how you're going to build and sustain your company. Because, well, if the government buys a bunch of stuff from you and you go out of business, who's going to sustain the system? So they want to make sure that you're still going to be solvent and around when the time comes. So this is a place where you can talk about, your expected revenue streams and your sales predictions, what your expansion plans are. What markets are you going into? Not just DoD, but non-DoD markets. Is your system dual use or multiple use? Meaning that you can do multiple products with it or multiple customers. Again, how do you design, build, and sustain your company as well as your product? And other factors can apply as well. Sometimes, if your system relies on parts such as that iPhone that are made in another country, if that country is an adversary to the US, well, that could complicate getting parts. So you might need to pre-stock. Ideally, everything's made in the US or at least in a allied country, and there are specific laws that apply to that. I talked about ITAR briefly. If it's a weapon system, there will be restrictions there. There may be classified stuff that needs to be dealt with. One of your team may need a security clearance. Make sure you talk with the contract specialist and understand that. And you'll also be asked to disclose anybody on your team that's not a US citizen. That has not traditionally been a factor that counts against you. It just means there's additional oversight and paperwork you have to do. So just some things to keep in mind as you go forward. And I talked about this last time. SBIR data rights are really great for the company. You get that exclusive data rights for 20 years. But also, Section 12 of your technical volume, you can assert limited rights on any technology that you developed on your own dime ahead of time. Rennie did that. The little miniature HVAC unit they developed for the NASCAR cooling vests, well, they spent their own dime to develop that, so they asserted limited rights right from their Phase I proposal, and they got to keep that. So if the Marine Corps ever wants drawings of what's inside that box, well, they're going to have to pay for that. Turns out they didn't need to. They don't want to have to repair what's inside that box. That's additional parts they have to provision and additional training they have to do. Much easier just to swap that box. So it worked out well in both partners. But just to let you know, if the stuff you've already developed, you can exert the limited rights right from the start. Now, that was the technical volume, but you'll also have to do a cost volume. Remember from last time, this is not a lowest bidder situation. You can ask for the full up to 250K or whatever it is. You just have to justify it. And that justification has to be on your expenses for those RDT&E or those R&D efforts. What's your salary? What's your team salary? What kind of major components do you plan to buy? How much do they cost? What's your overhead? How much travel do you need to do? In general, just explaining your costs. Be specific, be realistic, be reasonable. And if you have questions on what costs are allowable or unallowable, talk to the contracting specialist or talk to Fedsprout. Anyway, remember, the money needs to go towards R&D activities, not business development. You won't need to buy a new test rig for your design. That's one thing, but they're not going to pay for your new conference room. Now, all that probably seems like a lot, and it is. Thankfully, there's help. The TABA program in particular is an excellent support system, a support program to help with a lot of those areas that I talked about. If you have questions on your IP and data rights or commercialization and transition, if you need regulatory support for FDA, anything like that, TABA can do that. Fedsprout is one of the providers of TABA services. But I would definitely look into the TABA program. That's a great way to get additional funds to meet some of those areas that you might not have the skills to do. And there's other supporting documents depending on what you're doing. There will be fraud, waste, and abuse training you will need to do, so the certificates will need to be included. If you have anybody that's a non-US citizen or affiliations or references, ITAR security clearances. If you're doing animal or human testing, you might have documentation. Talk to the contract specialist. Make sure that you're submitting everything you need to submit for that final proposal. So that was a lot, but I'll just summarize some of the main points that I want to speak to here. The speaking directly to those requirements, not just saying, yeah, we'll do it, give us money, but speak to the requirements and give numbers. Our design meets the objective oxygen output requirement of 20 liters per minute thanks to our innovative oxygen separation technology. This technology is so efficient, it will use very low power, meaning that it will require fewer batteries in order to meet the full mission runtime. You see what I did there? I didn't just speak to the technical goals, but also to the ConOps. For the Master Sergeant reading that, he hears, oh, great, it gives me the oxygen I need, and it uses fewer batteries. I have to carry less crap. So that's why knowing that ConOps can be important. Knowing what needs to be done in order to meet the goals and the mission of the end user. Take full advantage of the TPOC question and answer period, but also consult with other people. Familiarize yourself with similar systems. Familiarize yourself with that ConOps and ConImp as best as you can. Make sure your qualifications link back through those technical objectives to that topic requirement. We will be able to produce this sorbent technology based on our years of experience with working with similar oxygen systems. Our engineer has specific chemical engineering experience using these technologies. Speaking in clear and concise language, having that commercialization roadmap, making it clear you know what it takes to turn your idea into a thing, having realistic costs, realistic schedules, not trying to sell the government a moped and asking for the funds to build a Cadillac or vice versa. And as always, particularly those of you who are new to SBIR, take full advantage of that 6 to 8 weeks you have between when the topic drops, October 1st, and when the closing date is. Now that's the technical part, but there's also other things you can do to gain some points, or at least not lose points. Make the reviewer's job easy. Sometimes I had over 150 proposals to go through and not much time, and that was on top of my usual duties. So if I lost patience, you lost points. A compliance matrix is an awesome thing for, well, any government proposal, but particularly SBIR. It's a table. You state the specific technical objectives that they put in a topic. System shall produce no less than 20 liters per minute. Column 2, met. Column 3, paragraph 7, page 4. That way the reviewer can flip to paragraph 7, page 4 and say, oh, system shall produce 20 liters per minute using our technology. Got it. Check. That they can go through a lot faster and make sure you're meeting all those technical objectives, and that will help your score. Being direct and to the point, getting to that so what, making it clear that you understand what it is they want and that you have the technology and you have the skills to do so, and you have the pathway to make it happen through your commercialization plan. Images should always tell the story. Don't waste space with stock images like I've done in this presentation. Make sure every single drawing, make sure every inch of paper is filled with something that is pushing forward your design and your story. And do not exceed the page cut. I'll reiterate that as I did last time. They will cut the extra pages. So you saw this one last time. I won't go through it again. Basically, all those things I told you to do the opposite. You will not have a good time. I will take the time to mention specifically with that, trying to bend the topic to fit the technology. When I had that expeditionary medical refrigeration unit, one of my phase 1 proposals was for a small company that had developed a system. It was about the size of a football. It was made of stainless steel, and it kept 2 units of blood cool for days at a time. It was used by USAID in Africa. And, it was an awesome system. I'm sure the pararescue guys would love to take that, put a couple liters of low titer typo, molly it to their backpack, and jump out of a perfectly good airplane with it. But it's not what the Marine Corps needed. So they didn't get very high points because it did not meet our technical objectives. Had they instead described that system in their related work and then told us how they were going to use the technology and knowledge that they leveraged in that design in order to build what we wanted, and again, speaking past tense we here, they would have gotten a lot more points. So even with all that, as I said, it's a challenge. You might not be selected even if you do an excellent job. But the good news is they will tell you why you lost your points. Try again. It may take several times to finally get a contract. Don't get discouraged. And hopefully all the things I told you here will help you maximize that score and again win that contract. Thank you very much. I think we have some time for Q&A left.
Yeah, Jack, do you want to talk about these resources? Is there anything here that people should take note of?
Oh, yes. Well, the DoD SBIR and Navy USMC SBIR websites there, you definitely want to familiarize yourself with those. as just that's where the topics post, that's where the rules for SBIR are posted. That DoD SBIR process guide, that's the one that had the big yellow arrows before, that will step you through the process. There's a link to Tableau resources as well as the Navy SBIR transition program. That latter is more for phase 2 and getting it to a phase 3, but it's good to familiarize yourself with that, because if you're doing a Navy SBIR, you could talk about that when it comes to your SBIR phase 2 goals. But in general, just all of these websites will provide either the information you need on the SBIR program as well as the actual topics themselves.
Great. Well, thanks, Jack. As excellent presentation. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I would recommend if anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll probably wait around for a few minutes to see if there's any other questions. And maybe Jack, if you want to go to the next slide, I think there's some more references there.
Yes, this is a lot of information here in addition to those SBIR websites. This is a lot of the stuff that the federal acquisition programs are based on, the FAR and the DFARs, the DoD 5000 stuff. Defense University is a place that teaches all of this stuff. There's federal appropriations law. This is just everything that governs that contract. So if you get a SBIR contract, you will get a lot of FAR clauses. So you can go to that FAR website and look up those FAR clauses, or download a copy of the FAR to look up the FAR clauses and know what they mean. Same for the DFARs. So this is supplemental reference information on how the government does business, how they buy stuff, how they sustain it.
Okay, thanks, Jack. We do have one question from Christopher regarding the grading points. Yeah, I think Christopher, maybe I don't really understand your question. Do you want to come off your mute and just ask the question yourself?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for the great briefing. It was very detailed, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The question I had was understanding each branch of the military has their own grading rubric and points and stuff. Is the 100 points that you shared, is that more from an Army's perspective or Navy? I was just curious at the different service branch kind of viewpoint.
Oh, as far as I know, all DoD does the 100 point. That's definitely the Navy Marine Corps rubric. It's possible another service does things differently, but that is, from what I understand, the way that the DoD does business. And I know it's different than like NIH, for example. But again, talk with the individual contract specialist for a specific SBIR topic you're interested in, and they can tell you different. They might tell you differently if things are different, and it may be different at different levels of the developmental stuff. Like an early setter, maybe they do things differently. I've never worked with a setter, to be honest.
Great, thanks.
I don't see any other questions, so I'm guessing maybe we could probably wrap up, and everybody can get the additional 10 minutes on their calendar. One thing I do want to just mention again is, for any free one-on-one consultations, half an hour, I've shared the link in the chat, and it's in this presentation as well, which you'll see in the recorded webinar. With that, I'm just going to close and hand it over back to you, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you, Alap. And thank you, Jack, for that presentation. That was really detailed, really comprehensive. I really appreciated it. So thank you, everybody. That's been our time for today. If there's any further questions, feel free to ask, send an email like Alap has sent. There's also a link for their free one-on-one consultation for 30 minutes. And so thank you for joining Nucleate and Fedsprout's workshop today. The recording will be up roughly within a week. It's posted on the Nucleate YouTube channel, so be sure to have an eye out for that. And yeah, for further information and details, feel free to contact me. And yeah, thank you very much for your time today.